I joined when I was 18. I enlisted Marine Corps because I knew they were better trained and I didn't want to go in the Army. It was too big. No, I served in World War II. I wasn't trained. I was trained as an infantry soldier, as a soldier, but I did everything, drove trucks. And when I got wounded, they made me a postmaster on an island. I had quite an interesting 3 years in the Marine Corps. Helped defeat the Japanese. What was my life like? Very exciting. Never a dull moment. I met a lot of interesting people. Oh, I was sure we were going to win. We were told that, and we did it. 2 weekends, I think, in 3 years. But I came home and graduated in uniform. They gave me 2 extra days leave from boot camp to graduate in uniform. I was salty. Oh, there were a lot of parades. We had a big one out in San Diego, bands and everything. And then a couple of years later, when I was a civilian again, we had other parades that I marched in. And we had parades here in Warren, too. Oh, yeah. I thought I was King Tut. I was a sergeant when I was 18 years old. I think I was one of the youngest out of 2000.
I certainly can.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you join on your own?
22. It was the very end of the Vietnam War, and it was the last draft that the country had for quite some time. I don't think they've done it since. And because I really didn't have any options at that point in time as far as college or anything, I decided to sign up and make a choice of what I wanted to do instead of having them tell me where I was supposed to go. So I signed up.
What branch of the military were you in?
I joined the Army.
Why did you choose that branch of the military?
Well, because that was the only office that I knew. They have enlistment offices in the city of Danbury, if you know where that is. And I went to the Army office. I really didn't know the difference at that time between the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, or the Navy.
That's interesting, Mr. Newton, because you're our third interview, and you were the third veteran to say that they joined because of they knew where.
I would say our most important role during both wars was we would fly what they call a mobile hospital, and they would have the back of the airplane would be set up with litters, and they would have doctors and nurses and emergency technicians, and we would pick up wounded soldiers and take them back to either Germany or the United States to be taken care of. Now, the reserves is kind of neat because it's not a full-time job. When you're in the reserves, you only fly on weekends or whenever you have extra time that you can get off from work. The first Gulf War ended kind of quickly. I think we all thought that maybe it was going to last a little longer, but then the second one, it turned out like we thought because we won quickly. Now, you would have duties at the base, but I would still get to see my family. So during both wars, my reserve units, they call activated, so they became active duty for an entire year.
Hello, I am Trevor. Today is October 18, 2011. I am interviewing Mr. McDowell. Terry, were you in?
It was the Air Force, and I took my basic training in San Antonio, Texas. The first time I was on a plane was the time I flew from Newark Airport to Ardmore, Oklahoma. I have no idea where Ardmore, Oklahoma is. And then from Ardmore, Oklahoma to San Antonio, Texas, which is, I was there for about the next 5 or 6 weeks.
Were you in or did you serve in peace?
Sort of a peacetime. Since I joined in 1961, the conflict, war in Vietnam was just sort of heating up. The United States government eventually decided to add more military forces in Vietnam. I was sent overseas, but not what you would think is overseas. My overseas tour of duty was in Canada. So after I took my basic training in San Antonio, Texas, I was transferred for advanced training in Biloxi, Mississippi, and I was there for 3 months, and it was the first time I was away from my family.
you drafted or did you join on your own?
I joined on my own.
What branch of the military were you in?
I was in a couple of different. I first served in the United States Marine Corps, and then I went to the Army Reserve and the National Guard.
Why did you choose the branch of the military?
As a child, I always wanted to be a Marine. They showed the most pride, and that's something that I wanted to do when I grew up.
What war were you in, or did you serve in peacetime?
I was in several different. I was in during Libya when we invaded Libya in the 80s. Then I was in during Operation Desert Storm and the other Iraq wars and Afghanistan.
How long did you serve in the military?
Over 20 years.
What kind of technology did you have while serving?
Most of when I first was in the Marine Corps back in the early 80s, the technology was.
It was the only branch at the college I went to, and that was the ROTC program. It's very limited in college. At that time, you either had, the college had field artillery, it had the naval, it had the Air Force. And if you go back a war before World War II, the Air Force and Army was all one. It wasn't a separate Air Force and a separate Army. It was Army Air Force, and that's my father. Flew a B-17 in World War II, and he was shot down over Germany and was in prison for a year and a half. And he got out, and then I was born after he got home. So I almost wasn't. I took Huey into, Huey was the helicopter that was more or less my car while I was in Vietnam. Took him down to Chu Lai. That's where I joined the 1st and the 14th. And went out to Fire Base Professional, which is out in the mountains, and that was my means of transportation.
United States Air Force. More opportunities for an education than in the other branches.
What war did you serve in, or did you serve in peace?
I served in peacetime during the first Lebanon conflict, already in the military. And 4569 is right there. And I don't know if you can pick my picture out, Amelia. I should take a peek, see if you can find Grandpa. Don't look at the names, look at the pictures. Over here. Technology I got while serving was going through radio school, radar school, and navigation school. I think the most important thing, not only what I did, but is what my whole squadron did. We, while in Japan, we were awarded the Air Force Outstanding Unit Award. We evacuated over 500 people from the northern part of Hokkaido, and we brought in over 658 tons of food, clothes. That to me, I think, was the most outstanding thing, Force Outstanding Unit.
When you were serving, what was your life like?
What was my life like? My life, just like your life. This is you's life. Mrs. Wright's life. completely around the world. But it was an experience. I don't think I'd do it now at my age. Anything else?
If you serve,
And when I say that, I'm talking about the Vietnam men and women that came home from Vietnam, call them baby killers, murderers, you know. And unless people have actually been in these countries, nobody has the right to say what is going on there unless you have been there. Like I say, I was not in the full battle of anything, but I was.
were you proud to serve your country?
Yes, I was very proud.
When I was 17, didn't want to go to college, so I decided that I wanted to do something, not stay in town. So I went down to the recruiter and I learned all the information I could about the Marine Corps. My older brother was in the Marine Corps at the same time, and I just thought that would be a good path to take at the time. So I actually joined up because there hasn't been a draft in a really long time also. I was in the United States Marine Corps. I think what I liked about the Marine Corps was that you had to be tough to be a Marine. And they carry something about them. They make you work very hard to find the best person you are in you, to be the best you can. And that's what I wanted to do. And it actually did great things. I loved being in the Marine Corps. Both. I was in Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. But I also served 2.5 years before, when it was peaceful. Also after the war, I was in for about 6 or 8 months. My total length of time was 4 years of active duty, which included my...
Most of the thing is to be in the service to do my job, to serve my country. It's hard to say. We had our ups and downs like everybody else, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the service. I mean, that's why I picked the Air Force. You have a lot of advancements. Like today, even today, you've got all kinds of schools to go to. I mean, when I was in, even though we don't have what the electronics and stuff they have today, you had opportunity to be radar, gunner, you could be a pilot, you could be engineer, you could be just any old thing on the Air Force. You could even be a cook, an MP, anything, you know. Oh, I knew it was going to turn out all right because we had the Russians on this side, we had all the other Asian countries fighting with us, so we had, you know, enough men and supplies to do our job. We knew it was going to come out all right, just going to be a matter of time, because eventually you know, when you run out of ammunition or anything like that, you're going to have to give up or do something. Well, I only got one furlough. I just stayed in. I used the time to get out and get paid. No parade. I'll do it again if they claim I'm too old now. Most memorable event was, there was a lot of them. I mean, a lot of good things that I remembered. Most of all was my crew. The men I work with, they were like this. You know, you hear all the time how buddies stick with buddies. It's just, I have nothing outstanding outside of general thing I did. I enjoyed it.
Today is October 17, 2011. I'm interviewing my grandfather, Wayne Wilson.
Well, actually, I was both drafted and then joined after I was drafted. Almost 4 years. Telephone was our technology. I volunteered to take someone else's place to go to Vietnam because, I was a cook. Lives are a little different than the normal naval personnel. Most all naval personnel serve watches a day, do a Pacific job. And no one's exempt from that except cooks and corpsmen. So I worked 2 days on and 2 days off, and I was very fortunate. That's actually when I was in Little Creek, Virginia. When I was in Vietnam, we would work 1 day off and 1 day on, and we'd switch to watch at 12 noon. So in effect, you worked 7 or 8 hours every day. Well, I was pretty fortunate because I had every other weekend off. I came home when I was in Virginia, which was the majority of the time. I came home almost every other weekend for the 2.5, 3 days. But normally when you had leave in the service, you'd take probably 2 weeks, 14 days, or you had 30 days leave a year. No, there was no parade. It was during Vietnam War. Was not a popular war, and very popular during the Vietnam War. Yes, I'm proud to serve my country, and I'm proud to do what I'm doing now, which is military funerals. I think flying home from Vietnam, getting off, we had to refuel.
No, I enlisted in 1950 when the Korean War broke out. 3 weeks after the Korean War broke out, I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And that was the beginning of a long...
Why did you choose that branch of the military?
It goes back to the Second World War, and I heard about the Marines in the Second World War, and I thought if I ever had to go into service, I would go in the Marine Corps. So when the war broke out in June of 1950, I waited about 3 weeks and I enlisted.
What war were you in, or did you serve in peace?
I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps, and I was in Korea, and I got there in January 1951 and left in March of 1952. And then later on in my career, I